Hello, this is Tony Clarkson and Michael G. Reccia with Question and Answer Soul Group Insights. And today I have a question here from Louise Davis.
Hi, Louise.
Hello, Louise. My daughter's called Louise. I have just watched with interest your recent channeling to give answers to Tricia's question about suicide and murder. I found this answer very helpful and therefore further to that have a question of my own.
Right.
In the last few years, I have been in a situation whereby I have had to make difficult decisions around the care of my dogs and would be very grateful if you could gain some insight and wisdom around the question of euthanasia, a difficult subject, but my question is specific towards the animal kingdom as they are, for most of us, less able to communicate their wishes or for us to be able to interpret them. With love and gratitude and blessings for all you do, Louise.
Thank you, Louise. Yeah, animals, it's difficult, isn't it? Because we want them around us. We don't want them to go. And in many cases, we sort of keep them alive here far longer than they should be alive here, in that we allow them to go to a certain point of suffering and to have suffered to a certain degree before we take that step to ease their suffering and to let their physical presence go. I've had various dogs and cats in the past, and I've always found that at the point of them being ready to go, ready to leave this life, they give you an indication. And so with animals, I would suggest that it's important to become quiet if you feel that they are reaching the end of their physical existence, and to ask for some indication that they are ready to go. They're not left alone at the point of physical death. Jane and myself had a very naughty spaniel called Molly, and she very suddenly had problems with a brain tumour, and it became instantly apparent over just a few days that it was time to set her free. But we were fortunate enough that when we'd taken her to the vets and she'd been set free, we were told that there was an angel with her at the point of her physical death. And very quickly after that, my father, who looks after many of the animals that we've had, brought her through and showed her, she gave us a picture of her being very happy.
This is your father on the other side?
Yes, my father on the other side. Yeah. And messing about in his fields and in his gardens, yeah. and being as naughty as she ever was here, but there in a higher vibration. I had a Cairn Terrier, which I think I've mentioned in another question in the past, who had diabetes, and it became apparent to me that it was time for her to go. And so I asked her, and I said, "Do you want to go? Is it time for you to go home?" And she said yes, and I got that impression, that voice in my head, and I had to reluctantly, of course, take her to the vets. And early in the following morning, I was woken up by her bark. She barked 3 times to let me know that she was okay. We had, my mother and I, many years ago, had a beautiful Persian cat, beautiful cat, and he had a tumour that we discovered. And we had to send for the vet because it was obvious that he was suffering. And on the morning that the vet was coming, he went around the house and he looked at each room and said goodbye to each room. And then I held him as he was put to sleep. We can't let animals suffer. But we have to be aware of the time that they have here and when it is time for them to go, and that to keep them here beyond that time is actual cruelty. And so we have to tune in. And you might say, well, I'm not psychic, I'm not mediumistic, but you will get that inspiration if you ask for it, and you will get an impression from the animal that it is time for that animal to go. I'd like to end with a story of an injured sheep that we found a few months ago. I think that the sheep have been savaged by a dog. And we came across the sheep in a field, and it was in a very bad state and kept trying to rally itself. And I put my hands on the sheep and said, just let go. Just let go. I tuned into the sheep's spirit and said, just let go. And it looked at me, and then the light went out of its eyes and it died. But at that same moment, I saw that sheep stand up perfectly well, perfectly happy, perfectly healthy, and walk off into the light.
With your psychic eyes?
With my psychic eyes.
Yeah.
Yes, yes. But there was that communication between the sheep and myself, because the sheep was suffering and was hanging on us saying, it's fine, just let go, just let go. We have to accept that communication with our animals takes place. And takes place far more often than we think it does. And also that animals are capable of communicating with us. I had a cat that came to me that was my cat during a very traumatic time in my life, and stayed with me during that traumatic time and acted more like a dog than a cat. She would jump up on my lap and she would nuzzle into my chest, and she'd stay with me for hours. And she was extremely affectionate. And then as my traumatic time passed, as I was coming out of it, one morning she jumped onto my lap, and I heard in my head the single word, goodbye. And then she jumped off again. Now, the following morning, she used to go out at night as cats do. We couldn't find her. She didn't come home until we scoured the streets and found that she died, and she was by the side of the road. She hadn't been hit with a car. We think she might have been poisoned. But the point is, she knew she was going. She knew that it was time to go. She'd done what she'd come here to do with me, and she'd said goodbye and had moved on. But with acceptance of that, not in the way that we would fear death, but knowing that she was going home. She was going to a greater and a better existence.
I know PG said many times that the animal kingdom, the diva, they're much more connected than we are, that they actually don't fear the death. They know where they're going.
Yes.
They know there is no such thing as death.
And their attitude to this life is completely different than ours. My little Cairn Terrier went blind because of the diabetes, but she's perfectly happy. Perfectly happy until the point that she wasn't. But they don't approach this life as we do. They don't fear illness as we do, and they certainly don't fear death as we do. And they are connected, as you quite rightly say, through the diva that runs through them, with other examples of life. Dogs are connected to other dogs. Insects are connected to other insects. I'm not suggesting that there's the level of sentience in an insect that there is in a dog, but there is that knowledge that flows through every life form. It flows through us too, but we've forgotten it. It flows through every life form that is a conscious connection to higher vibrations and a conscious knowledge at some level that this is a journey, a step in an infinite journey. And that there is nothing to fear when this journey ends and they begin the next one.
It's a great position to be in many respects.
It is. It's an
big
envious, we're envious of that. Yes, they have. They have. They're accepting of life. They're accepting of their spirituality, of their position in the universe, and they're accepting of their movement into higher vibrations when the time comes, which we're not. We hang on to this life at all costs.
We do. Michael, thank you very much for that. And Louise, I do hope you've got everything you wanted out of the answer there, perhaps a little bit more. Thank you so much, and God bless. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Louise. God bless.